I like the Bucky's hat.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Did you pick that up last week while you were in the southern part of the country?
I did. Yeah, I made a special stop at the embassy and cultural center of the state of Texas, Bucky's.
Was that your first time to a Bucky's, or have you been before?
It was my first time. I haven't spent a lot of time in Texas. I was in Austin a couple years ago, and we did not go to Bucky's. We did go to HEB, which is another institution of Texas.
Yeah, HEB is fine. Bucky's is the mecca though. Bucky's is humongous, and in fact, I've only been to one Bucky's, but I've been multiple times, and it's on the road between Houston and San Antonio. I've been
Okay.
there about 10 years apart or so, and I was most recently there in January.
I will
And
say, oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
no, I was going to say in the parking lots they had a sign up that they were building the world's largest Bucky's at that location, which it is already. If you've never been to a Bucky's, I mean, it's like a Walmart-sized truck stop, so it's humongous.
Yeah, I
And
was when I pulled up to it, I was like, this isn't that big. And then I got inside and I made a joke about this the next night in Tulsa, but it's like the white trash New York Stock Exchange in there. It's like people are just walking all directions. They all know where they're going. I have no idea what they're doing.
yeah,
And yeah, it was crazy. I didn't even get I was gonna partake in some gas station brisket, and I had eaten so much non-gas station brisket earlier in the day that I was brisketed out for the day. I met up with my buddy Josh Firestein, and we absolutely demolished an unhealthy amount of barbecue
yeah.
down in
If you
Texas.
want some quick barbecue and you don't want to go to a real restaurant, they do offer that there.
Yes,
They have hot food, they have cold sandwiches, they make their own like snacks and stuff that you can
they
get.
have a wall of beef jerky at the one that I
Yeah,
went to.
yeah, and then on the other side of the store, they have like a clothing section. It's very strange. Where
You
you
think
can
I
get.
don't have a Bucky shirt on deck for next week? I got a Bucky
If I would
shirt.
have
I bought
known
my
you were
daughter
wearing the
some.
hat, I would have worn my own. I have my own Bucky's
Oh
T-shirt. I could have
hell
worn.
yeah!
So yeah, it's an institution, and
Yeah,
long live Bucky's. I really wish they would get something like that up here. I don't know if it would catch on,
I
but
know
just
we need
one.
a regional. I've never been to a Wawa, but I'm always like I always hear about Wawa. We need a regional gas station with decent hot food, and that's
We
all
don't
I
have
got.
anything. We don't have any. Now, for you and me down here in the Tacoma area, if you're familiar with Pierce County at all, you know about the Tahoma markets, because not only would you know about Tahoma Market because it's probably the best mini mart around because they're usually pretty big, but it's also the tribal gas stations.
Yeah,
So the prices at the tribal gas stations quite a bit lower than most of your standard
yeah. What's the deal? They don't
area.
have to pay state tax; they just pay federal tax.
There's certain
Something like
taxes they
this.
don't have to pay. Yeah, so they basically compete price wise with Costco. Like they're always right on par with Costco. Uh, yeah, Bucky. No, here's the thing. Okay, Bucky's. Nick Lindsay says Bucky's could only be located in Ellensburg. I argue that Southwest Washington would be the better fit. That the road down to Portland.
Yeah, I
Right
can
here
see
in
that.
Portland. Yeah, there's some gaps in there where they could do well.
I will say there's a problem when you get to Southwest Washington where owning a retail business doesn't make a lot of sense because of the sales tax issue. But yeah, I also think, by the way, like I think they could work just about anywhere. I don't think there's like a but Fife has like a Flying J and maybe a Loves, by the way, as I've traveled more for comedy, and especially between like two tertiary towns in a lot of cases, a lot of times I am having to pee at a place, and I now know all the trappings of a place that's going to have a cleanish bathroom and will let me pee there without any flack. And so I will if they have a huge sign on the freeway that's got their gas prices, that's going to have a clean bathroom I can piss in. That's what I've learned.
Yeah, and there's certain places like that that are pretty good. Bucky's is great. Bucky's is
Yeah.
yes, anyone would pee there.
I peed at a lot of quick trips, I think they're called in Texas or in Oklahoma. Those they have a great bathroom system. If they have showers, then it's really the shit.
Wow, that seems like there would be some interesting activities happening there.
I think it's I actually for a minute considered because I was doing a lot of golfing and I was like, well, I'll just go golf near a gig and then I could shower at like a Love's or whatever. And you can, I don't think it's as bad. I had the same feeling as you, like it was going to be just like two trucker men having sex with each other in there. I think there's a lot less of that than you expect, is what I would say.
Okay, good to hear. Glad
I haven't done it. I also haven't executed it, by the way.
Or at least you at least considered it, which is that's the first step.
Yeah, I'm not against doing it. I will do it at some point, but
please report back when you do.
Yeah, I also have a Planet Fitness membership, and I just don't shower there either. So
yeah.
Anyway,
I once upon a time when I had a Planet Fitness membership, would not encourage using the showers there. They're pretty disgusting. I mean, you're paying $10 a month, and the people who work there are probably not earning very much money, and they do not care about cleaning the showers.
Yeah, absolutely. So though I would love to talk about gas stations and public showers for an entire podcast episode, that is not the point of today's episode, because as promised last week, we are going to go on a deep dive into the trade deadline. And once again, for the second episode in a row, I'm going to go off camera briefly, and I'll be back in just a moment. But you go ahead and tee us up, Alex.
All right. Yeah, obviously a lot that happened in the last couple days with the Mariners and with basically all of Major League Baseball with the trade deadline. So we'll focus heavily on the Mariners because I think there's I would say the reaction to the trade deadline is pretty mixed. I mean, I don't know if that's your thought.
Yeah, I would say overall it's mixed. I think that the people who view what the Mariners did as negative are only looking at it. They're looking at it in a vacuum where the Mariners are the only team that was trying to do anything, or that was trying to and without any consideration of who was actually for sale.
Yeah, I mean, if you just to kind of evaluate the deadline for the Mariners as a whole, I mean, we basically went into this period leading up to the deadline thinking, okay, the Mariners need 2 bats. Everybody said they need 2 bats and they need 1 relief arm. Well, they got 2 bats and they got 2 relief arms. So I
want to make a little. I'd like to beef with that slightly, but yes,
they exceeded what everyone demanded that they do. You could argue that they met it, I guess, if you don't think one of the arms is up to par or one of the bats is up to par. But by all accounts, they did exactly what you would have wanted them to do. And on top of that, they got the biggest bat that proved to be available. Of all the guys that were traded, they got by far the best hitter. Although, I mean, I guess you could argue maybe Jazz Chisholm is right there with Randy Arozarena, but Arozarena has proven it for a longer period of time. So they get the best bat available on the market. They get 2 relief arms, and they get a complimentary bat as well.
And we'll talk about this later. I'd also like to make an argument that he was not the best bat on the market, but that's we can talk about that in a moment, because let's just summarize quickly what the Mariners did at the deadline, and really real quick to answer one of our questions here, because this was a little bit confusing to me. Also, what time today is the deadline? 9 p.m. or midnight because of the East Coast, asks Nick Lindsay. You're a day late, Nick Lindsay.
If you're still waiting, don't ruin it for him. I feel like if he's still waiting for the deadline to happen, let's let this man live.
That's true. That's true.
It's like when my grandma used to watch the second re-air of a Mariners game on Root Sports and thought it was a whole new game. Like, who am I to come in and ruin the fun for you? If you think this is a new game, enjoy it.
Here's what I'll tell you, Nick Lindsay, and it's my sources are telling me that the Mariners are done this year making trades. It's controversial, but I think they are done making trades. So yeah, they trade for Randy Arozarena, which luckily they did in time for us to record a podcast last week, and then shortly before the deadline, they trade for Justin Turner, Yimi Garcia, and all right, here I go, JT Chargois.
Chargois, yeah.
Okay, and
although
so
some people say the R is silent. I don't know. I mean, he was here for a while.
Chargois.
He's a former Mariner turned current Mariner.
Sure.
Chargois.
I'm not gonna commit to that last name unless that dude's on a second contract.
His nickname. I remember his nickname when he was here was Shaggy. Just call him Shaggy.
Yeah, I saw Shag. Just Shag is the nickname also. Which is also the senior citizen home that Lou Piniella is a spokesperson for now, which is a real just kick in the dick for our youth. Okay, so first off, Justin Turner's, I think, 39 years old. He's, I think for most of his career was actually pretty underappreciated. It was like a very good hitter, good defensive third baseman, played the bulk of his prime with the Dodgers and was like very good. I would say like one of the, probably like a top 5 or 6 third baseman many years. He's not that dude anymore. Still a pretty good hitter, but not a great hitter. He's like first base only. Has the last this year he's played only 100. Coming to the Mariners, he had only played 117 innings in the field. The Mariners immediately trotted him out at first base. So
my first thought was, hey, if you can get another bat, if you could get a third bat, a Rosarena, Turner, and another guy, then you don't have to play Turner in the field, because I can only imagine. I am 39 years old. Justin Turner is 39 years old. Granted, we are far apart on the physical spectrum, I'm sure. But once a week, I go play softball. I go run around in left field, and the next day my body hurts.
Yeah.
This man is going out and playing in the field every single day. I promise you, even if he's in great physical shape at 39 years old, you play him in the field 5 days a week, his body's going to hurt. Those legs will get heavy. The bat will get a little bit slower, even as a pro. And just knowing how the Mariners do business, the thing that concerns me the most about Justin Turner is not Justin Turner in and of himself. It's how the Mariners are going to handle him and potentially run him into the ground the way that they ran Mitch Haniger into the ground in the early part of this season, playing him in right field every day. So, yeah, that was my first thought. I was like, if we can just make this guy a DH, great. DH has been a black hole for the Mariners all year. And what do? They immediately send down their starting first baseman and throw him out there to play first base every day.
Yeah, and so I guess like what I would say about him and where I think this trade is like not the most exciting, although it's still, I do think it's an upgrade. Certainly an upgrade over what you would have expected to get from Ty France the rest of the year, but it's not. Justin Turner is still significantly worse than an average Major League Baseball DH. Again, it's like so like I don't know, what is the combination of like minor league quad A-ish guys actually going to be that? Would they have been that much worse than Justin Turner? I'm not actually sure what they get. They traded RJ Schreck for him, who I'm not is not on my radar enough to be angry
no one
about.
should know. No.
Yeah.
In fact, obviously we talked a lot about Randy Arozarena last week when that trade was made. But the biggest prospects they gave up were for Arozarena. All the other guys that they dealt pretty far down on their list of ranked prospects. And on top of being far, anytime, it doesn't really matter where a guy ranks on the list, there's always going to be some nerd that pops up that's like, actually, I had this guy rated third.
Sure.
And it's like, I didn't hear any of that. Didn't hear any of that when Schreck was dealt, when the guy that they gave up for JT Chiguah was dealt. Like, other than the Arozarena deal, no one seemed to have any problem with the prospects the Mariners relinquished to get the guys that they did, which is a good sign. And ultimately probably means that those guys will become Hall of Famers, because what do any of us know? But yeah, I mean, the interesting thing with Turner, initially I was like, okay, this is kind of underwhelming. And then as the rest of the deadline shook out and there weren't a lot of big bats being moved at all, really, it made me realize, like, okay, this is probably the best they could reasonably get just based on their understanding of the market as they were talking to different teams. And I think Turner helps this team in a number of ways. I mean, I just watching his first couple games, and the same could be said for Arozarena, and kind of watching these first couple games with them here. Those guys put together good at bats, but not necessarily in the way that this shitty offense was doing all year. Up till now, the Mariners' idea of a good at bat was just seeing a lot of pitches. They had this whole, everyone has joked all year long about how their approach was just take as many pitches as you can, and then hopefully the starter's out before the fifth inning. But the reality was they were taking pitches, getting into 0-2 counts, and then striking out. I mean, and the pitchers were still making it through quality starts, 6 or 7 innings, So their approach has been terrible. I understand what they're trying to do. I understand what they're trying to achieve, but the execution and the results aren't there. Well, since Arozarena and Turner have gotten here, they might not be hitting the cover off the ball necessarily, but like I saw in one game, Arozarena hits 2 swinging bunts down the third baseline. He's fast. He beats them both out. Those are singles in the book, right? I mean, but the key is he just put the ball in play. Now, exit velocity, all the metrics that people have fallen in love with are not going to, prop that up as a real good hit, but it's all the same. If you're standing on first base at the end of the at-bat, it's a success.
I mean, I think the thing about those is, like, that's fine. First off, I don't think Arozarena ran very hard on that play. I will say that. I don't know if he ended up safe. But I was like, before he got called safe, I was like, he was dogging it down the line, and he ends up safe because of also, like, you just can't, that's not a sustainable hit, right? Like, the reason all this that's a lucky hit that Cal Raleigh can get as probably not quite as easily, but
yeah,
it's not something that's not what you it's not, I'm not saying it's not valuable and I'm not happy it happened or whatever. That's not what you traded for Randy Arozarena for.
No.
Is for the infield single because of some weird placement of a ball or whatever.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say, I mean, to kind of continue that with Turner is, I watched Turner. There's a guy on second base. Turner's goal in that situation moved this guy to third.
Sure.
And even just little things like that, this offense has not been able to do because these guys are not equipped to put together the type of at-bat that moves a guy over or execute a hit and run, things like that. Turner hits a single through the right side, and the guy advances, right? Like, it's everything you want. And not only that, he gets a hit out of it. Not only did he not just move the guy over by hitting the ball to the right side, but he actually gets a hit out of it. And those are the types of at-bats that, like, I feel have been lacking. I've watched like every single game this year. There have been times where, like, unless they're hitting home runs, the Mariners are not able to manufacture runs. And just since Arozarena and Turner have gotten here, those types of at-bats have changed. Guys are actually able to put some at-bats together and do a little bit more and are not so susceptible to the strikeout or flyout that ultimately doesn't do anything to help your offense or move guys around the base paths.
Sure. And so I guess what I would say is the only reason that Justin Turner is an upgrade is because the team had such an enormous gap at that position.
Sure.
And because of that, like, overall what I would say is a couple weeks ago I was talking about the Mariners going out and making a bunch of kind of small moves. And so I'm happy with this trade deadline. Also, it's worth pointing out there wasn't like an obvious, because Vlad was said to not be available. I'm sure they could have packaged everybody to get Vlad. I wouldn't have wanted that. The like Pete Alonso at one point we thought might be available. There was a bunch of guys, Arizona, a bunch of teams just kind of stayed in the race. So there weren't a lot of sellers. And you and I looked at this early, like the teams that were presumptive sellers, Colorado, like the guy that's interesting on that roster is Chris Bryant. He's got like 3 years and a huge contract left and has struggled to hit recently. Like, that dude's living off prospect pedigree at this point.
Yeah,
there
Chris
wasn't
Bryant,
a lot.
There would be no benefit to the Rockies trading him. I mean, they're either trying to dump his salary and getting no prospects in return, or
probably paying a chunk of the salary,
or
frankly.
paying salary and getting a middling prospect.
I mean, I don't even know if you get a prospect. I mean, you get one because you can't trade for nothing. You can't. I think you literally can't trade for nothing.
Yeah,
but
I would say Chris Bryant. You look around baseball. That is the problem that's why there's so much stagnancy leading up to the deadline. I feel like because you have so many guys that would otherwise be coveted, but teams just are not willing to pay money like they were before. And I think a lot of it I've seen people talk about all the TV rights deals and all the RSNs that have fallen apart recently have gotten owners kind of like clutching their pocketbooks a little bit and being a little bit closer to the vest with their money. We know that's happening in Seattle. Like, that's been happening. That's not new news to anybody who knows the Mariners, but it's happening all around baseball. And so when you have these guys on big contracts, it's tough to get rid of them right now. I mean, the Marlins did it a couple days ago with Josh Bell, or I guess ultimately moved him yesterday, but they put him on irrevocable waivers the same way that the Mariners did with Ty France. And they were just hoping somebody would claim the contract to pay out the rest of what he's owed. Ultimately, they found a trading partner in Arizona, but they had to pay some of that salary to get rid of him and get anything out of that deal.
Just like the Mariners did with Ty France, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Mariners, if you look at that, by all accounts, it's a trade, right? But the Mariners traded Ty France with money. So basically his salary to acquire a guy who will never see the major leagues. Like, barring a miracle is not, this is minor league catching depth. Yeah. And, the return there is negligible.
I just want to make a point about Chris Bryant, because this is like a guy who is maybe at the top of people's list of very obviously, because Luis Robert obviously wasn't available for a song. You would have had to overpay for him, it looked like.
The White Sox we can talk about the White Sox.
Well, and that's fine. He's a young dude on a controllable contract. Chris Bryant's 32 years old. If he's on the last year of this deal, I think he's probably getting moved for, again, he's got a 56 WRC plus following a season with a 73 WRC plus. He has a $26 million annual average value on a contract that lasts until 2028. That dude is a crater of value. There is no there. Yeah. That is this is like the miracle that the Rockies would have to hope for to trade Chris Bryant is like the miracle that the Mariners got when they traded Robinson Cano to the Mets.
He's an
that
ace,
trade was
for
an
sure.
absolute miracle, and this is the exact same situation where it's a guy who's got a pedigree, but is absolutely cratered in value and costs a shitload of money.
Well, and I mean, with a guy like Bryant, he came up to the major leagues really early. He conceivably could have been run into the ground. He played multiple positions. All of those things add up. I mean, it is funny because a couple seasons ago, Mariner fans wanted the Mariners desperately to sign Chris Bryant, and you'd already seen a decline in his numbers when he was in Chicago. It started falling apart, and that's only continued in Colorado, which theoretically should be a hitter's paradise. And
yeah, it's almost as though investing a shitload of money in free agency isn't a great strategy.
Well, yeah, you might get a job offer from the Mariners with that stance after that. The thing about the deadline, I mean, this is why I think going back to our original point of why reactions were kind of mixed to the Mariners deadline is because once again, they did the same thing that they do every year. They kind of jump the market early. So they get a Rosarena early, and all of a sudden now the goalposts shift. Your expectations for what the Mariners can do in any given time period go up because now they've got this big name early and they still have room to grow. They haven't given up any of their major
because
prospects.
It's as though because they traded for him 2 days before the deadline, he doesn't count as a deadline deal. So you like want the same stuff to happen at the deadline as you already wanted, plus the Rosarena deal that already happened.
Yeah, I mean it's a reality for sure. But I mean it's like they put themselves in this position to need as much as they did at the deadline because they had a terrible offseason. I mean, they had an offseason where they didn't bring in anything of value, although you could argue, I guess, Jorge Polanco was finally started to turn it around.
Sure. Well, I do think, like we talked about last week when we were talking about our Rosarena, there is reason to be hopeful that the Mariners, much like I said, the Mariners would, early in the season, you may remember this, I said the Mariners are going to have they're going to be better changing nothing. And I think we could agree now that they've had the big swing up and the big swing back down. Nothing was different about this team, but they had a stretch of good luck and a stretch of playing better or having better results. And there is a thing with Julio Rodriguez. There's like statistical reason to believe that even though he has flaws in his game, he will play better in the second half. He's been unlucky. Cal Raleigh, despite how good he's played, how well he's hit, is actually statistically unlucky. J.P. Crawford, statistically unlucky. These are guys who are like theoretically keys to your offense in the second half. So it's possible that with those guys just getting neutral luck, the Mariners are significantly better offensively. And then you add a Rosarena and Justin Turner on top of that, and you're like 5 players who are potentially like 30% better than the guys, 3 of which were them in the first half of the season, but that were better than the guys that were in those positions in the first half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, the Mariners offense to begin this season was so abysmal that almost any major league hitter was going to be better than what they had because most of the guys were hitting below replacement level, even some of the good players. And so, adding a Rosarena, adding Turner, that lengthens your lineup considerably. Like, even if you thought Ty France was fine and should have stayed here playing first base, Justin Turner is a better hitter. And the defensive, if there's any sort of defensive downtick, it's very minimal between France and Turner. It's not going to be so much that you would notice. Whereas, when they were running Tyler Locklear out there every day, there was a noticeable difference. I know there are a lot of people who are in love with Tyler Locklear and probably want to see him play every single day at first base, but he was learning on the job. I mean, up until this past year, he was a third baseman.
Sure.
And, there was a few balls in his last few games that Ty France probably picks those balls and Locklear could not handle them. He couldn't handle those throws. And that's part of being a first baseman. It's not just going up there and thumping. You actually have to play the position a little bit too. So, he still has work to do on his game. And I think getting time to play regularly at Tacoma will help. And who knows? I mean, if there's an injury on this roster, you're counting on a 39-year-old every single day to play first base right now. There's a chance they might end up needing Locklear again before this year is up. Hopefully not. Hopefully everything goes well, but there's a chance. And, to your point about if the Mariners had done nothing, in this offseason, if they had kept all the guys they had last year and didn't bring in the guys that they ended up adding, I think you're right. They probably would have done better. I mean, they effectively wouldn't give Teoscar Hernandez $20 million, so they let him walk, but they're giving Mitch Haniger $16 million.
Sure.
And I mean, you can go look at the stats. I mean, everybody knows that Teoscar was an all-star. He won the home run derby. Mitch Haniger, outside of a couple of weeks to start the season, has been a very below average Major League Baseball player this year. And so just those little cost savings, where they're trying to save $3 or $4 million, it really bit him in the ass, you know. And now they're paying Mitch Garver, you know, $12 million or whatever it is this year and next, you know, each season. That contract looks terrible because he just has not been able to figure it out this year. And now they're still running him out there as a DH most days for whatever reason. But even if he's just your backup catcher, I mean, it's just not working with Garver, and there really has been no hope in sight. And you hope maybe in the offseason he can go figure something out and come back stronger next year. But you know, he's another guy who's on the wrong side of 30, and typically you don't see a bounce back at this point. You know, if they start falling apart, it looks like Chris Bryant, where it just continues cascading downhill until their careers are ultimately over. So, you know, a lot of these things that the Mariners did to, whether you want to call it saving money, comparing Teoscar to Haniger, and also dumping Robbie Ray to get Haniger, like that's another one. Robbie Ray just came back, made his first and second starts of the season this year.
Well, I think that makes it a net gain that's a little bit bigger financially, right? Because you drop Robbie Ray's salary.
It is, but if he performs at all, it's going to look terrible. Like, just because of how bad.
But it's not saving $3 or $4 million in that case. It's actually saving $20 million because what the offset of Ray to Haniger is probably even a little bit more. Also, I'm not defending not re-signing Teoscar Hernandez, although I think, like you said at the beginning of the season, that he was a malcontent. I loved him as a prospect. He underperformed in Seattle. I don't know if you get the same performance.
Yeah, I don't know if I said malcontent.
I'm giving you. He
didn't buy into the philosophy. He wasn't like, you know, he was striking out too much.
This is actually the nicest thing anyone's ever said about him is he didn't buy into the Mariners' offensive philosophy.
This is probably the right move, honestly.
Okay, I want to talk about the other two guys, and then I want to talk about like things that there's things that I liked the Randy Arozarena trade. Justin Turner trade's fine. Yimi Garcia trade, I think I probably at the time, because we just got it like in real time, I think it's probably a little bit of an overpay, but I'm not super pissed about it. The JT Chagua, he's a guy, by the way. So we talked about Yimi Garcia, like brief scouting report, right-hander, high leverage guy, fastball slider, hard thrower. Chagua, he also throws hard, but he's got the Brian Wu thing where he doesn't miss bats. He's not generating strikeouts in recent years, despite throwing hard. And this is a thing that I think I will be curious, because my belief is that I can't remember exactly who they traded for him, but I think it was like no one of significance. And so it's possible they take a guy like Shag, we'll call him Shaggy. And I like that. I think we stick with Shaggy. I think it's possible that they could take that guy and maybe make a couple tweaks, and he's got physical tools to be a dominant reliever. And they've been very good at that historically. Like, and obviously they had him in the system before. I understand that, but I think that's like, to me, that guy doesn't actually. What I will say, the reason I would contend that they didn't add two relievers and add two hitters, Justin Turner's like kind of borderline, not actually a even replacement level version of that guy of a DH / first baseman, and then Shaggy, whatever he is, they also got rid of Ryan Stanek right after we talked, I believe. Or no, maybe right before. And I'm not saying, by the way, here's what I'll say. Stanek, since being in Houston, or this year and last year, has not been a quality reliever. He has all the makings. You watch him. He's got long hair. He throws really hard. You think this guy's going to be a shutdown reliever, and he's not. That's like the reality. And I'm not. But I think having another guy on the roster that throws 100, giving him an opportunity to figure it out, and as opposed to trading him for nothing, for organizational depth, for peanuts, to me, I cannot imagine there wasn't another person less valuable on the 40-man roster or on the 25-man roster that could have been the sacrificial lamb to get these other dudes on the roster. So I don't know that I necessarily think Shaggy's been significantly better than Stanek has been this year. I don't know that like long term bears out, and if maybe it does, but I'm like, to me those feel like the trading for Garcia, trading a better player for Garcia, and then getting nothing essentially in return for Stanek felt like there was a little bit of offset in my mind on those two moves.
Yeah, I mean, Yimi Garcia is a much better version of what you wanted Stanek to be. I mean, Stanek is, I think the Mariners think he's cooked. I think they think this is who he is, the guy that they watched implode a few times recently. I think there's more of that to come. His first outing with the Mets went so poorly that the fans booed him off the field.
Sure.
That's just brutal. You know, your first outing for a new team and you're already getting booed. I mean,
it's bad.
And Stanek, I mean, he's a guy who's been around, and you're right, he throws 100 miles an hour, but 100 for a batter doesn't mean what it did as much as it did a few years ago. These guys can catch up to that velocity, and it's his other stuff. I mean, his other stuff just wasn't playing, and that's where it became an issue. And I mean, when you're walking guys, you can't be a leverage reliever and walk guys. It's one thing if you get hit around, if you're a leverage reliever and you're throwing 98, 99 and guys happen to hit it, they hit it. But when you're Stanek, I mean, I think the final straw for Stanek was he walked a couple guys in his final appearance, and it ultimately cost the Mariners a game. And I think they were just done with that. And I know it could. There's two ways to look at this.
Aroldis Chapman walks almost 5 guys per 9 innings. I want to just say that.
But he also throws like 104. I mean,
the guys who can actually afford to walk guys are the guys who are striking out, who are avoiding contact. Walking guys is much worse for you if you're a pitch to contact pitcher.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there was the cynical look at the Stanek trade, or whatever you want to call it, where the Mariners were just trying to dump salary. I don't necessarily think it was that. I think they truly believed they had gotten everything they possibly could out of Stanek, whether they're right or wrong. I think that's what they, I'm the first one to be cynical about the Mariners when it comes to money and stuff, but I really do think that they were just done with Stanek and they didn't think he could offer them anything else.
Yeah, well, I would say they have a record of being done with people significantly earlier than they should be and getting fucked as a result.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue with JT Chagua. I mean, they traded him for Diego Castillo. They traded him and Austin Shenton, who's still in the Rays organization, for Diego Castillo. Terrible trade. Diego Castillo is basically out of baseball now. Never really managed to become a valuable reliever for the Mariners. And Chagua has been very consistent since the Mariners gave him up, to the point that he's back. So, it is an interesting. I guess I would give them the benefit of the doubt with pitchers, because they usually have a pretty good idea of what a pitcher is. With Chagua, when he was here in 21, he was one of those guys, like so many of these other guys, that they basically pulled off the scrap heap and turned into a viable reliever. Whether you consider him a leverage reliever or not is one thing, but a viable guy that you can throw out there every single day and feel okay with. And frankly, I mean, for as good as their bullpen has been the last few years, they just didn't have a lot of those guys this year.
I guess the it's not really relevant to me whether he's better or not than Stanek, because you didn't have to make the choice. You didn't trade them for each other. You could have kept both theoretically, and that was kind of my argument.
Yes.
But I get what you're saying. I think they are. It does seem like they are done with Ryan Stanek. He also goes to the Mets, who I don't think are going to do anything. I will say, the one trade that I'm worried about, that I'm worried about hating, is Yusei Kikuchi to Houston. I feel like that's a dude they're going to just turn into an absolute stud. Where did he go after? Didn't he spend was he in Houston? No, he was in Toronto, which was at the time when Toronto was when they were churning out pitchers. God damn, Kikuchi always has such great peripheral numbers that you're like, this dude should be so much better. He's going to go to Houston and be their fucking ace, dude. I can feel it.
Well, Houston gave up a ton to get him. I mean, it basically crushed the entire starting pitcher market from the moment they made that trade, because they gave up.
What is a ton, though? Because did you hear no top 100 prospects got traded?
Yes, I heard that stat, but none of Baseball America's top 100 got traded. Yeah. The 3 prospects that they gave up, however, the part of the reason the trade ended up being, experts were calling it in Toronto's favor, is because 2 of those 3 prospects that Houston gave up are major league ready right now.
Sure.
So you can plug them into the lineup and feel okay with it. Loper Fito's been up for most of the year with Houston. Ultimately, they might just end up being, 4th outfield or backup infield types, and maybe it doesn't even matter. And ultimately, the rental of Kikuchi, maybe it pays off. Maybe Houston ends up winning the division because of it. Houston was pitching desperate and everybody knew it. I mean, I think that's why Toronto was able to get so much for, 2 months of Yusei Kikuchi, basically, which seems crazy that anyone would care that much, but he's kind of established himself as at least a reliable starter.
And he's a guy who always feels like there's upside. I'm
gonna just for Yusei Kikuchi, that guy is gonna hate Houston. I mean, as a Japanese person, You
Isn't
can't
there a
even
pretty
like.
big Asian population in Houston.
I mean, there probably is because it's a large city, but you can't even get like teriyaki down there. How's this man supposed
Dude,
to
you know
eat?
teriyaki. First off, Alex, you know teriyaki is like a fucking Seattle specific thing.
No, I know it is. It originated here, Toshi's teriyaki. But
Yeah, but it's like only here. It is only here.
no, there's places all over the
there are,
country.
no, it is not as prevalent in other places. The fact this is wow, this is your white side coming out. Alex,
See, I know that in Texas they have places that call themselves Seattle style teriyaki, which could be very confusing to a lot of people, I'm sure. But yeah, I can't imagine like, have there ever been any Japanese baseball players that have been with the Astros? Like this is
Well,
not
yeah,
gonna be a perfect
that was
marriage,
sorry.
I
I was confusing. What's the dude's name? I think he was Cuban. The dude that like pulled his eyes back. What's his name? I was good. Yuri Gurriel. That is not the.
No, I don't think it was Gurriel. No, I know what you're talking about.
Wasn't it? No, wasn't I thought it was Gurriel.
Maybe it was. I don't know.
Yuri Yeah, I think it's. Okay, well, yeah, it was. I believe it was. He.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and it's 2 months. He's only going to have to survive 2 months in Houston, but I can't imagine he's going to want to like stay there. So yeah, I mean, for them, it's truly a rental getting Kikuchi, but they needed pitching badly. They've been ravaged by injuries and ineffectiveness for some of the guys that they've trotted out there. So to them, I mean, they feel like they got exactly what they needed. I'm sure their GM was doing the Jerry DePoto thing and proudly trumpeting all the acquisitions they made. But, I feel much better about the Mariners deadline than I do about the Astros or the Rangers, and that's a good thing for the Mariners. They definitely made themselves better than the rest of their competition in the division at the deadline.
Yeah. I want to make a couple gripes about things that I wish they would have done because, and by the way, when I say I wish they would have done, I mean, and by the way, 7.1% of Houston is Asian. A lot of Asians in Houston.
That's not much, man. For a city that large, 7%.
Hold on a second. Hold on. USA Asian population.
No, look up like Seattle or look up Toronto where he was.
Hold on. Seattle Asian population. Well, yeah, and this is, we can quibble about what Seattle's going to call Asian versus what you're talking about, which is you're talking about teriyaki restaurants. Not,
okay, you want to know what Toronto's percentage is by comparison?
Sure.
34.81%.
Right, but I don't think those are. I don't think that's
a huge difference.
But it's also not. It's not teriyaki Asians, Alex. I'm telling you this. It's.
I mean, you want to go to a place where you have community. Like, I don't think.
I don't think that this is like we're getting into a deeper or a different conversation that I want to be part of. But like,
my whole point was that I don't think he'll ever resign there. So like,
that's fine.
They're basically just renting him for 2 months. They gave up a lot for a rental. Let's put it that way. Giving up 3 prospects for a rental that's very risky. It's very risky. I mean,
Seattle might be like one of the most Asian cities in the country, and it's 13.1%. I think if we could do the Asian math later, Alex. I think it's adequately Asian. That's my opinion. But I do think it's possible he doesn't resign. What I will say is, if he goes there and they give him the suntan lotion and pine tar fucking hand cream and his spin rate goes up, he could absolutely become a stud. In the same way that like you would see guys go there and you're like, oh, that dude's like Garrett Cole is gonna go there and just be an absolute stud. It's unfair that Garrett Cole goes there or Charlie Morton goes there or whatever. Like when Charlie Morton signed in Houston, I was like, oh, it's fucking this dude's gonna be like an ace for.
Yeah, if you see Kikuchi's velocity pop up a couple miles an hour,
his spin rate's going up a couple hundred RPMs.
You can raise a few eyebrows. Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Okay, I have brief complaints, and then I want to talk about the guys that I would have rather seen the Mariners trade for potentially. And we could talk about other big trades, but there weren't that many that were like that exciting. It was like, I would say there were a lot of moves. I don't know how it rates compared to other trade deadlines in terms of like just raw moves, but most of them felt like mid-range relievers, not like there's so many teams in contention that there wasn't like a lot of big pieces out there. And a lot of teams, like the Giants, were selling and buying at the same time. It was like very confusing to analyze. Yeah, yes, exactly.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, there was a lot of movement, but yeah, not a lot at the top. I mean,
yeah.
Jack Flaherty goes from Detroit to the Dodgers. The Dodgers won the deadline, which seems unfair because they're the fucking Dodgers. They're already stacked. They go get a top of the rotation starter in Jack Flaherty. They basically fleeced the White Sox for Michael Kopech. The White Sox did this 3-team trade with the Dodgers and the Cardinals where they just got absolutely reamed. They gave up 3 of their biggest pieces. So Michael Kopech, high leverage reliever, throws 100 miles an hour out of the bullpen. Former top prospect as well.
Like stats aren't that great, but I'll
yeah. I mean, I would say stats for any White Sox player this year, you kind of got to take them with a grain of salt. We just saw them. The Mariners just played there over the weekend, and that team does not give 2 shits. I've never seen a less inspired Major League Baseball team than that one. Everybody looked like they wanted out, but they just get absolutely crushed in this deal. They get like a couple middling prospects from the Dodgers back. They get rid of Eric Fetty, who was one of their top 2 starting pitchers. So one of the guys whose name was being thrown out prior to the deadline for months. They get rid of Tommy Pham, who's arguably their best veteran hitter, not named Luis Robert. And they get rid of Michael Kopech all in the same deal. And all they get back are one like post-hype aging prospect in Miguel Vargas from the Dodgers and 2 lower tier prospects from the Dodgers. I mean, it's like, I know that the White Sox have a rookie GM, 40-year-old Chris Getz, who was, he was a player not too long ago, and he's still very young. But I mean, to take that deal, to take 3 of your biggest bargaining chips and package them into one single deal by itself is probably a mistake. But then to not even get that much of a return and getting rid of those 3 pieces at once is just craziness. And so I think, you had so many little things like that where it's like that should have been 3 separate deals, and that would have probably changed the market a little bit. But instead, if one GM who has no idea what he's doing and he throws them all into one deal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to spend a ton of time arguing with you on that. I could probably beef with it a little bit, but that's fine. What I would say I was upset the Mariners didn't do is, number one thing that I think they didn't do is acquire a backup catcher. And it wasn't like there weren't people available. Danny Jansen was available, who hits a little bit, or who has historically hit a little bit, a guy who I like quite a bit. But there were other catchers available, and I would have liked to see. I think Mitch Garver as your DH is a flawed and fraught proposition. It's so much worse if he's also your backup catcher. And it's not even like, I guess the thing to me that bugs me about it is not really like, listen, if they both go down, if Raleigh and him both go down in the same game, or if Raleigh goes down and the Mariners have to have a pitcher hit 1 at bat, whatever. It's 1 at bat, it's 1 game, that's fine. The problem I have with it is it incentivizes the Mariners to just keep absolutely grinding Cal Raleigh into the ground. Yeah. And if Cal Raleigh is going to be good beyond 2024, he can't play 140 games this year or whatever he's going to end up playing, and you expect him to come back and be. That's not, and it's just, he's a catcher. It's the reality. There's probably been guys historically who've played a lot of games and been fine. I don't give a shit. It's 2024, and that fucks catchers in 2024. And the Mariners, for as many things as they try to be like actively progressive on as a baseball team, this to me is so glaring that this gap exists on the roster, and there's nobody there to fill. It was the dude, I guess theoretically the dude that came from the Mets.
Seby Zavala. You were thinking of Seby Zavala earlier in the year when he was the backup.
No, I'm thinking of the isn't the prospect the Mariners got from the Mets a catcher also?
They might have gotten another catcher.
No, that's what I'm saying.
All I can tell you is all the catchers that they have acquired this year are not. They're not really major league ready. I mean, they could be like fill-ins here and there.
No, and that's what I'm saying. It's like I don't think you're gonna Rylan Tom. No, wait.
He's an outfielder. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think he's talking about maybe the Ty France.
Oh, the Ty France deal.
That's a low A, Paul. That's like
he was a low A. So that's the problem I have. Is like Zavala's fine. I think I think people are gonna be clamoring for Harry Ford to make a 2024 appearance. And by the way, like that bat statistically is like that's not ready. That's he's not actually, everything he's doing at the lower levels is like what pretty good but not ready for the big leagues. He's like not hitting for a ton of power, doesn't strike out a lot, walks a fair amount because he's playing against a bunch of guys that are trying to learn how to throw in the corners, right? Like it's walk rate at that level is less sustainable, and there's just nobody. And Garver's not really a good catcher either. That's the if Raleigh goes down, if he goes down like and catcher injuries, like, they're common. He was injured last year. He was injured.
Yeah, they're absolutely screwed if Cal Raleigh gets hurt. There's
there's a
no
single point of failure on
There's
that
no
team, and it's at the position that takes the biggest pounding. Like, that's just, it's not.
I mean,
it's,
here's the thing. Cal's pretty tough. I mean, 2 years ago when they made the playoffs, he was basically playing through a hand injury the whole second half of the season.
sure,
and
played badly, by the way.
On his catching hand, which I can only imagine what taking an Andres Munoz fastball to the broken catching hand feels like, but it cannot be fun. And he was doing that every single day.
Sure.
Cal has got to be one of the toughest players in baseball. I mean, there's no getting around that. But the Mariners are kind of, it almost feels like when they get so focused on the analytics, they kind of forget about the human side of players. I've said that a lot, whether it's just in the way that they treat people and the way that they treated Kyle Seager during his departure, or in the way that they, take a guy like Mitch Haniger and just absolutely run him into the ground to start the season when he's coming off some, a pretty injury-laden recent history, and they just seem to have no regard for that whatsoever. It's like, yeah, you can look at the analytics and say, like, this guy gives us the best chance to win, but over time, there is some diminishing returns if you're wearing a guy out physically.
But we have data. We have data that says these guys wear out. Like, it's not really like a unquantifiable, squishy, like, human thing. Yeah, we know catchers can't play 150 games a season. We know this.
Yeah. It is interesting because for as much as you can say that they baby their pitchers, pulling guys at 90 on a repeated basis, they don't seem to have the same care or regard for position players. And that's, to me, there's just no other word for it than interesting. It's like, why is that the case? Why do you think that?
I'd say stupid is a good word.
Well, I would almost say, like, when it comes to your position players, a pitcher is throwing hard every 5 days. But
yeah,
a position player, if you're Mitch Haniger, you're running out there in right field every single day. I mean, that takes a toll on the body. And I get it. These guys are in good shape, and you can debate what you should expect from a guy. I mean, I think the days of Cal Ripken Jr. playing in every game for forever are long behind us. So, sure. I don't think that's going to happen too much anymore. But, yeah, to focus in on the situation that they have right now, there were basically two avenues they could take to remedying this backup catcher thing. You can either go out and acquire a backup catcher. Really the only guy whose name was out there was Danny Jansen. And it's funny, 5 minutes before we got on to talk here, I'm watching the Mariner game on Danny Jansen's up to bat. Mariners are up 2-1. The guy in front of him, Dom Smith, batting in front of him, hits a double. So he's standing on second base. Danny Jansen, similar to what we were talking about with Justin Turner earlier, he's got one thing in mind. Hit the ball to the right side, get Dom Smith over to third. He hits a ball through the 4-hole for a single. Dom Smith scores. They do the Supermo in on his at-bat. Jansen took – George Kirby's pitching. Jansen's a right-handed batter. He throws an inside pitch. Jansen keeps his hands inside the ball. You can just see the grimace on his face trying to keep his hands inside the ball and force it the other way. He manages to do it. That's a professional hitter. This guy might not be hitting, 275 with 20 bombs, but it's those little things that this offense, this lineup has not been able to do all year long that make the difference. That's the difference between a playoff team that wins and a team that maybe sneaks in or just barely misses the playoffs. And that's where the Mariners could benefit. Now, I think a guy like Jansen was maybe going to be out of their price range a little bit for what the Mariners were comfortable with. I'm not sure. But the other way that they could have approached this is you go get a third bat. You go get Yandy Diaz. Yandy Diaz's name was all over the place, right? You go get a guy like Yandy Diaz. You put him at first base. Now Justin Turner's DHing every day. Now Mitch Garver is strictly your backup catcher.
Well, you know what you might do is negotiate with the team you're trading for Justin Turner with and get Danny Jansen as part of a package. Like,
yeah, it's possible that for whatever reason, maybe it was not something they could do.
Yeah,
I feel like there were multiple ways to remedy this. Whether it is going out and truly getting another catcher, or just getting a bat so you can remove Garver. It's not like Garver's hitting. Like, the fact that we keep running him out there at DH is mind-boggling to me because it's like this guy is showing you nothing. I get that every season before this he might have been good. He hasn't been good at all this year, and now you're in a situation where every time you run him out there at DH or at catcher, today Mitch Garver happens to be catching and Raleigh's DHing. Either way, if they're both in the lineup, you are playing with fire. And the fact that they keep doing it is crazy. It's crazy.
Here's another thing. You know who was better than Justin Turner at the plate the last 2 seasons? Danny Jansen, like this dude, and you know he played less games and etc. But like to me, yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to find the actual trade terms, but again, it's like here's what I know: no Baseball America top 100 prospects got traded, so it wasn't like a guy who was going to be probably in the top 6 Mariners prospects that you went for.
Yeah.
Now, of course, like the like we've talked about, that you have to have a willing trading partner. It's not necessarily like the 8th best prospect in the Seattle system. Do the Blue Jays value the same as whoever they got for Danny Jansen? There's a lot of human dynamics involved, of course, but this dude made perfect sense to me. He's I mean, fuck it, have a 3 catcher rotation at DH, catcher, and whatever. Like it's real quickly though, I want to talk before, because you got to go relatively soon.
Yeah, well, one last thing I'll say about Jansen. I mean, the Blue Jays ultimately traded him in division, so they were
Sure,
clearly going to be willing to give him up to the Mariners.
that's true.
If you're trading him to a division rival, so it's, you know, maybe it was just the asking price was something that the Mariners weren't comfortable with, or, you know, I think the other thing is we really rely on prospect rankings, but the reality is the Mariners farm system is much better than most farm systems out there. So, you know, the Mariners 25th ranked guy could be the equivalent of a top 10 prospect.
Well, no, that's what I was saying. It's also possible that while these ranking systems say that whoever they value in that range, the Blue Jays did not, and that they don't align on that value. Maybe they were asking for one of those guys. Maybe the guy they got from Boston, they value at a similar level to those, or the guys they got. They got 3 guys, 3 guys you're going to know very well. Gilberto Batista, Cutter Coffney. Yeah, these are like video game names. And Edinson Paulino. These are like 3 auto-generated names out of a
but three guys for a catcher is still a lot. I mean, regardless of what we know about these guys.
Yeah,
I'm sure the Mariners were probably not willing to part with 3 prospects for a catcher, but I mean, I 100% agree with you though. I mean, there was a way for them to solve for this, and they just flat out didn't do it.
To me, this is the only failure, the only obvious failure of the deadline. I'm like perfectly happy with Turner and Arozarena, and the 2 relievers are, you know, fucking who cares? They're like 2 like non-closer.
The relievers are they're never attractive, but you have to have them at the deadline.
Yeah, and they absolutely needed them, and they got them, and good. Like, check the box. You check the box on improving on Ty France. You check the box on getting a controllable hitter, which is, and for like not a ton of money. So for me, the deadline is a success. If you were giving it a grade, I'd have to give it like a high B, but with the understanding that for me, anything below a C, or like anything below like a D is what's not passing. Like, I would put it on. These fucking people putting out grades are scared to offend a team and give them a D. I say a D is still passing. I think it was a pretty good deadline. My only complaint is no backup catcher. That's like my and I have another. I'll still lodge another complaint because I'm willing to complain about a lot of stuff. Is there anyone that got traded outside of, so like the Danny Jansen thing or the backup catcher thing to me is a failure where they didn't fill a need. Is there a person that got traded for something that you think was like obviously better than who they traded for? Be that Justin Turner, be that Randy Arozarena, and I'm going to give you 4 names that I have in mind, and I'm going to tell you the guy, and then you can tell me if you think any of those guys or someone different. Mark Canha, Eloy Jimenez, Brian De La Cruz, and then Isaac Paredes, to me, is the guy who is the absolute most obvious. This dude plays first base, third base, hits very well, walks, 25 years old, multiple years of team control, and as we know, he did not cost a top 100 Baseball America pick. This guy's like a 3-win player already this year almost, and did not cost the top 100 prospect.
Yeah, Isaac Paredes, I mean, he's interesting because he has really developed in Tampa. He was originally a Tigers prospect and then became part of a trade that got him sent to the Rays, and he's flourished in Tampa. The thing that is interesting about Isaac Paredes, though, everything is pull side, and that doesn't play well in T-Mobile Park for a righty pull side hitter. And so, you know, when the rumor was that the Mariners were not interested in the Rays right-handed hitters, which is basically all they had to give up, I was kind of surprised because I was like, okay, like Arozarena, they're all good. Arozarena, Yandy Diaz, Isaac Paredes, they're all good hitters. And so when the Mariners ultimately landed Arozarena, great. You know, I don't care if this guy hits righty, lefty, or whatever. Like, if he can hit, the Mariners need him because they cannot hit right now. So that was huge. I think the concern with Paredes was that, with the Rosarena, he sprays the ball around a little bit. He offers a little bit more, in the speed game, he can run a little bit. Paredes is pretty much just a pull power guy, and that I think maybe scared them off. Granted, I don't think beggars can't be choosers. I mean, he would be an upgrade over whatever they have. So that's for one guy that would be very interesting, and I think a lot of people wanted is him, but there are some concerns there. Canha, I thought, Canha could have been an easy candidate for the Mariners just because he barely cost anything, and he's like a guy that everyone has always said seems like he should be a Mariner, and he's a West Coast guy. I mean, he grew up in the Bay Area. He ultimately goes back to the Bay Area on this trade with the Giants. But I think the Mariners feel better about their outfield today than maybe they did a couple of weeks ago. And I get it. Victor Robles is playing at a non-sustainable level right now.
Thank you for saying that, because the enthusiasm around him, like, there's two things. The idea that Josh Rojas is a good baseball player because he had 2 good months earlier this year, and the idea that Victor Robles solves any outfield issues that are non-defensive outfield issues long-term, even near-term, I think are both like flawed outlooks. They're both based on just enthusiasm and adrenaline and probably cocaine. And
Robles is playing pretty well, and I get that, like, he's playing above his potential, but you could also, I mean, this guy also used to be like a top 10 prospect. So it's like, maybe he is just a late bloomer too. I mean, when you're talking about a change of scenery, a guy who grew up in the Nationals system and became a National at a very young age, sometimes those guys, when they go to a different place, something clicks. And maybe that happened with Robles. But even if it all clicked, even if he is proving to be a starter the way that the Nationals once thought he was, he's not going to play at this level for the rest of the season. There will be some sort of regression. And who knows if that's a regression to the point where he's in a platoon with like Dominic Canzone or something, or if it's a regression where, he ends up being like a Josh Rojas, where even when things aren't going so well, it's still better than what you got. So you're going to keep running him out there. I don't know. Either way, I think that the Mariners felt better about their outfield situation than, maybe other people thought they should or would. And that maybe is what prevented them from going after Canha. But I would have liked to see him here because I think he offers something that he's another guy that it's like, hey, he's going to put the ball in play where a lot of your hitters just don't do that.
I also think that this like assigned DH is annoying to me. Like, who gives a shit if he's playing the outfield? He's a better DH than what you have. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's like, it gets Garver out of the lineup every day and makes him your backup catcher. Again, it's like you just get one more bat, and you don't have to do this shit where Garver and Raleigh play every single day. The other two guys you said Eloy Jimenez. Eloy is, I mean, he was going to be too costly for what you get. I get it. He didn't cost the top prospect. Eloy is, he used to be the biggest prospect in baseball, and then he just cannot stay healthy. And it's another guy where it's like, I think the Mariners get a little in love with left-handed hitters because of how their ballpark plays, which I understand. It's a shorter porch, easier home run to left field than it is, or to right field than it is to left field. Eloy's a right-handed bat. They really get obsessed with handedness, and they've got a lot of righty hitters. So there's all of that. But also, I mean, you're basically renting him because he makes so much money the next 2 years on club options that he's just going to get bought out for $3 million. So the fact that you would have to buy him out for $3 million after this year, the Mariners don't like spending money. That's $3 million you're basically throwing away, plus the cost of the rental for the rest of the year on this year's contract, which I imagine is hefty. That's just one of those things where it's like, even if Jerry wants to do that or the front office wants to do that, selling that to the ownership is going to be tough because it's a rental, because of the cost. And then who was the fourth? You mentioned one more guy. Who was the fourth guy?
Oh, let me get back to the thing. It was oh man, hold on. We'll get there. Brian De La Cruz.
Oh, De La Cruz. Yeah, I like De La Cruz. He's like 27 years old. He played in Miami, so people don't really see him play too often. Again, though, he's another guy. He's a right-handed bat, and that's just one of those things where the Mariners seem to get so hung up on that shit with the handedness that it might not have ever been a fit. But I think that's another guy. He's like what people wanted Eloy Jimenez to be. Brian Cruz actually is that. Like, Brian De La Cruz is pretty good at hitting the ball, spraying it around. He can hit for a little bit of power. He can kind of do a little bit of everything, and he plays a pretty good outfield. But for me, I mean, the names that people were mentioning, like, a lot of the guys that we'd been talking about for weeks didn't even get moved.
Yeah.
Brent Rooker doesn't get moved. I don't know what the A's were thinking. Like, I don't know what their plan is. They don't seem to have one. They're always trying to cut costs. It just didn't make any sense to me that they wouldn't move him. Taylor Ward doesn't get moved from the Angels. I don't think the Angels were ever going to make a deal with the Mariners because of Jerry DePoto's past history with them.
Sure.
But the fact that they didn't even move anybody of Ward's stature is funny to me. And then Yandy Diaz is the big one. I mean, Yandy Diaz was rumored to everybody, including the Mariners. And he's 32 years old. He's a guy that I don't understand how he fits into Tampa's future plans, other than maybe they just really, really like him. But he's a guy that when you look at him, he looks like he should be hitting 50 home runs a year, and he hits like 7. It's just very strange. He's yoked. He's absolutely jacked, but all he does is hit, line drive singles to all fields. So he's kind of an anomaly in that respect. And that's why, for me, that was the guy I really hoped that they would get, because he can use all fields. He hits line drives. He puts the ball in play. Again, one of those things that the Mariners just seem to not be able to do very often. He lengthens your lineup in a way that most of the hitters in the Mariners lineup don't do. And he puts together good at-bats on top of that, and he can play first base, which we know was a position of need. So it was like, if you get him, Arozarena, and Turner, man, you are set. Garver sees the field once a week, twice a week, playing catcher, and that's it. But just because it was more the moves that didn't get made, I think, that were surprising than the moves that did.
Yeah, and those ones you can't really blame the Mariners for, because we don't know what the price was, because they didn't happen with anyone else either. So I'm like, people want him to go get Vlad. Maybe Vlad really wasn't available, or maybe it was the price was so outlandish. To me, and we've been over this ad nauseum, is he's not a guy that I think was like a sell everything to get him kind of talent. I will say, by the way, since I started talking shit about his, I pulled up his game logs from like, dude, since I denigrated Vlad Jr. and said he was getting worse every year, genuinely has like a 234 WRC plus. He's been Barry Bonds since I said that he was, and so, you're welcome, Blue Jays fans. I think I might have turned this guy into a Hall of Famer.
I mean, it was crazy to me that he was ever even being mentioned as a potential trade candidate, because I think, if you acquire Vlad, that's like having another Julio. I mean, that is two. Now all of a sudden you have two franchise players.
Julio is fucking a great defender, and you hate that you said that.
In the lineup, I don't care. Defense on this team doesn't seem to matter. Just hit the damn ball.
All right. Do you want to try to do a home run game, or you have time for a home run game?
I don't have anybody for you. Well, let's skip the.
You want me to go first?
You can go first if you want. No, go ahead. I'll find somebody really fast.
All right.
There's somebody I wanted to give you. Can I give you an active player? I really wanted to.
No more active players. I'm done with the active players. Also, I'm probably like, I feel like this whole thing is predicated on you and I have the same era of baseball. That's like our depth of knowledge. And mine is frankly like the career stats of active players is not that. So I'm going to give you a guy who I don't think ever played for the Mariners, but is another guy that feels like he should have, like in the kind of Billy Butler, Mark Trumbo. It feels like Mark Canha must have had 2 or 3 stops here. A guy that, well, I'm not going to give you any more details. Paul Konerko.
Oh, Paul Konerko. Okay. Let's trace back his roots. I know he comes up with the Dodgers in like 94, 95. But that's brief. And he was a catcher. He was a catcher to start. So many guys start out as catchers. Yeah, he was a catcher. He was a huge prospect for the Dodgers. But then he ultimately, I think, gets traded to Cincinnati. And then ultimately ends up in Chicago with the White Sox where, played his best ball. What year did he stop playing, though? Like maybe 2012. He had a pretty long career. That was one of those guys. He was, sometimes prospects can be so big for so long. You get into that post-type prospect phase before a guy's even developed, and it like seems unfair. That was Paul Konerko. Paul Konerko in the late 90s, people were like, I don't think this guy's going to figure it out. And then he did. He just needed to go to his third team to figure it out. Big hitter, big power hitter. But, man, he's probably averages about low 30s. And if he came up in 95 but didn't really play, even in Cincinnati, he wasn't like a regular. And I can't remember what year he got to the White Sox, but he was probably like probably not playing regularly till like 99. and then he goes till, let's say, 2012 or 2013. So like 13 or 14 full years. 13 years, let's say 35 home runs a year at that rate. What's 13 times 3? 39. That's a lot. Is he over 400? 390.
Okay.
No. Okay, you got to talk this through because now I can go back to looking for a guy for you.
I know that's fine. So I will say again, your knowledge of like historical transactions and debut years is pretty good. He is a Dodgers prospect. He's a Baseball America top 100 prospect 4 straight seasons, 95 through 98, goes from 38 to 42 to 11 to the number 2 prospect coming into the 1998 season. He plays like 55 total games with the Dodgers, ends up in Cincinnati, 26 total games there, and makes his White Sox debut in 1999. Like you said, this is pretty good. Average 162 game average for home runs. You said low 30s. 162 game average was 30.
Okay.
Which you got to feel pretty good about. You've been every time you do 162 game average, you feel pretty good.
Yeah.
What I would say is that you estimated that Paul Konerko's career ended in 2012 and probably tacked a little bit of a discount onto those final years. It actually ends in 2014. So you tacked the discount on a little too early. 439 home runs for Paul Konerko.
That's pretty good. I didn't realize he was that high. You know, once you get up with the modern players, when you get up around 400, you're like, how is this guy not in the Hall of Fame? So it's like, yeah, it's an interesting, that period is always interesting when it comes to guys. Okay, I have a guy for you more or less from the same period. I was going to give you his brother, but then I thought, nah, this guy's more fun. And I'm not going to say anything else about him. He was the first of the 2 brothers to play in the major leagues. I'll tell you.
Can I guess?
Yes.
Is it? Oh fuck! Now I'm trying to think of who played first. Is it an Alomar?
No, it's not
Okay.
an Alomar. No.
All right.
It's an Upton. It's B.J. Upton, also known as Melvin Upton Jr. Remember when his last couple years in baseball, he was like, "Call me Melvin Upton Jr." Now it's like, okay, whatever, man. Like, you've been BJ for this whole time. How can we call you a new name now? Anyway, that's who it is. BJ Upton. Yeah.
Man, this is like, I feel like I'm just like wading. This is a problem because I feel like I'm just like wading into murky water and there's a piranha waiting under to bite me because BJ Upton is the lesser power hitter of the 2. It's like super prospect. I think comes up with the Rays probably in like 2006-ish would be my guess. Maybe, and then like I think also probably has the worst career of the Uptons. I believe was a shortstop at a point, but I could be wrong about that. And then ends up like a lot of people get drafted as shortstops and then don't stick at shortstop. Maybe he was straight outfielder. Justin Upton is like a bigger power hitter and would have been more exciting for this potentially, but I do think BJ's maybe a harder pick though. I think you made a good pick here.
Yeah, I'll just intervene really quickly to say, I mean, Justin Upton, everybody knew he was like power hitter. I think you would have been able to hone in pretty well on Justin, but you're right. I think BJ might be a little tougher.
It's tougher because like I don't think he ever had like a sustained stretch of power, but like were there years, and I'm like trying to think of where BJ Upton played the rest of his career after Tampa Bay, and I'm struggling to find it. Did they play together in Arizona? Man, you found a blind spot for me. This is also, by the way, 2007. I started working at a box factory at night. I lost like several years of baseball, so it's like I was in a coma for several years. Man, Justin or a BJ. Now I'm just going in between. God, this is tough. I'm gonna be curious like where he played because I'm like genuinely drawing a blank where he would have played after Tampa Bay, and I feel like I'm gonna almost by default end up high. Fuck, this is tough. I'm like I don't have I'm trying to go through the process and I just don't have the inputs for the process. I'm going like straight blind stab in the dark, which is never good. This is always what fucks me. Is
Maybe this is what it takes.
maybe you know what I got to black out. I gotta like do the blackout game where you hold your breath against the wall or whatever, and then wake up and scream a number out. God, I'm going 147 home runs.
Okay.
Fuck.
All right. Well, yeah, he came up with Tampa. He did come up as a shortstop. I actually forgot about that until you mentioned it. But he was a shortstop originally. He comes up in 2004 at the age of 19 years old, if you can believe it. Pretty young.
Yeah.
But he was such a big prospect, and the Rays were so bad. Like, what choice did they have? So he comes up for 45 games in 04. I don't exactly know what happened in 05. I don't know if he might have just spent the whole year in the minors, but he didn't play in 05 in the majors at all. He comes back in 2006 at the age of 21, plays 50 games. No longer a shortstop, however. Now they're trying him at third base. The next season, they would give him a little bit of run at second base. They were trying to find a position for him, and then ultimately settled on center field, and he actually became a pretty good center fielder. I was surprised to see he never made an all-star team, which it feels like for how bad the Rays were, he might have at least found his way to one, but no, he did not. So he spends from 04 until 2012, actually, he is with Tampa. And at that point in 2012, he's only 27 years old, so he's still got a lot of career ahead of him.
What did I say? What was the number I said?
For what?
The home runs?
You said
150?
No, you didn't. You said 140 something, like 147 or something like that.
Okay. We can replay this.
Go back and listen.
Literally, by the way, somebody just comment if you remember, rewind and tell me what I said.
I think it was 147. Anyway, so at 2012, he did play with Justin in Atlanta, though, if you remember. They both that's where the Upton here, Upton there meme comes from. Is from their days in Atlanta together. And he only lasted there for 2 years. That's where things start falling off for him. I mean, he's hovering around 200 with his batting average at that point. 2015, he goes to San Diego. 2016, he ends up briefly in Toronto, and then he's done. He's just done with baseball at the age of 31, much younger than you would expect. It is funny, though. I mean, I know Justin Upton had a very good career, much better than his brother. But the end kind of came quickly for Justin, too. I don't know. Something about those Uptons, man. When the end comes, it comes fast. And that's what happened to these guys. Now, BJ had some good seasons. In 2012 with Tampa, it's 28 home runs. 2007, really his first full season in the league. 2007, it's 24. His 162 game average is 18 home runs. He ends up playing 12 years, but again, 04 and 06 basically combined to be a fraction of a season. And 2016 is basically I guess he still has a full season in 2016, even though it's split up. So he plays 12 years, but he really only plays like 10 full. I'm going to tell you right now, your blind stab in the dark was about as good as you can do. His home run number, 164.
Damn, pretty damn good.
Pretty solid.
So 17 off. Yeah, I feel good about that. I thought they had played together, and yeah, now I don't feel guilty. I'm going to look up Justin Upton because it's like a guy who they were such an institution, the Uptons. And you thought
well, they were both huge prospects. Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both I think #1 overall picks, by the way, and by the Rays and the Diamondbacks, who came into the league. No, did not come into the league.
They came into the league together. Yeah.
Who did Colorado come into the league with?
Florida.
You're right. Okay, yeah. So they did come in the same year. Yeah.
Okay. Here's a stat I feel like really puts. This is like the stat that defines his whole career. He only led the league in one stat category once in his entire career. It was in 2008 with the Rays. And the category he led the league in was caught stealing. It's like, so he did have 44 stolen bases to his credit, but he also he got caught 16 times. So
that's a bad percentage.
Not great. Yeah.
I was also like doubting myself. I thought that Justin had played in Seattle, and it was so recently. Yeah. He hit 1 home run in 17 games with the Mariners.
Yeah, he had a brief spell 2 seasons ago, I think.
Yeah,
the year that they made the playoffs. Yeah, so he got a playoff ring. I don't think they did.
All right, well, Casey McLean Comedy. Watch my special "Do Not Shake" on YouTube. coming other places when it hits. I gave YouTube a 1 month exclusive for no compensation on their part, but it'll be on some other places hopefully by then. Yeah, thank you for listening. And you do something, because I actually think I have a comedy date I want to promote.
Oh, you want me to do something?
Say something fucking smart or whatever.
I don't have anything fun to say. Alex,
fill some air, Alex.
On Twitter. Please don't follow me anywhere else. I mean, you can if you want to. I have a whole list of people that want to follow me on Instagram that I just don't even like. I'm not even going to delete it, because if I delete it, you could re-request. So
yeah,
I'm just not even like, nah.
So just know that if you thought Alex hadn't seen your request, he has seen it and is rejecting you actively. And come see me this weekend, Saturday. I'm hosting. We're doing a monthly filming at Tacoma Comedy Club. I'm not like appearing on the YouTube every month, but I'm hosting and helping produce it. And then Cole Street Brewing, Enumclaw, August 7th, the day after my daughter's birthday. And then on August 18th, I have one of my monthly crowd work shows at Tacoma Comedy Club. Please come out to that. Those are fun, and I could get you in for free for sure. So hit me up on social media if you'd like to get into that show for free. Crowd work show. You know what crowd work is, folks. Yeah. Anyways, thanks everybody for watching. And hold on, what do we got? Bucky's sponsored stream coming in under the wire. Tyler with Bucky's sponsored stream. That's right. Yes, I've taken all the big money from Bucky's. I'm owned by Bucky's now, and
the beaver nuggets you can possibly eat.
Fuck, I didn't get beaver nuggets. I knew I needed to get something.
Pretty good. You missed out there. Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.